1 2 1 2
1 2 1 2
1 2 1 2. All good. All good.
Of course.
It's lovely.
It's nice. Yeah, it's a little bit of smoke in there. It's lovely. Finished in port casks. It's really good.
Well, the stuff he knows before drinking that.
Woo! Look at that wrecking.
So it's smoky, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It is actually lovely aftertaste.
The next one is proper smoke as well.
What's that one? That's the Glendalough one. That's smoky.
Glendalough is smoky. This is Mickle. There's really small outfit out in Galway.
What one are we drinking here first?
So the first one here, this is a really small company out in Galway in Salt Hill. They're a family-run distillery with a long history of making poaching back in the day when it wasn't so legal.
Yeah.
And they're transitioning now. They still make poaching. It's a big part of what they do, but they're making some fantastic whiskies out there. So one of the smaller companies, and they looked after the Fire Brigade Whiskey Club recently. Right. So this is what we're starting with tonight. Yeah.
Cheers for that.
Cheers, lads.
Let's launch it, lads. It's a smoky one.
Lovely.
Clears the nostrils.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The aftertaste, though, that's what's thinking. The smoke. We had a little bit of a taste of it before we came on, and it was still there, but it's one of the easier ones now that I've tasted.
Yeah.
The aftertaste, you know.
So that's like with whiskey, that's called the finish. It's a big part of whiskey. So obviously you start by smelling, nose, and then onto the palate, which obviously you taste the whiskey, but big part of the flavour and really good whiskies have a long finish. So after you finish swallowing it down, like for the minutes afterwards, sometimes you can still, as you breathe out through your nose, you can smell it again. And you get, with this one, you get the smoky peat coming through. And these lads have their own peat fields and all out in Galway, so they're cutting their own turf and they're using that peat to dry the barley and stuff like that to make the smoky whiskey.
You wouldn't think that much work goes into a whiskey, like when you break it down, like it's a craft, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge, yeah. Like I said, that family is tradition going back years, making poaching when they weren't supposed to be. Whiskey is generally an older person's drink, but I was always into the whiskey from a young age. Obviously, starting off with the normal stuff, Jameson and that type of thing. I was always a Guinness drinker from when I started drinking, so it's kind of a natural progression. If you're into that type of beer, that whiskey it goes so well with it.
You can't drink any more Guinness, so you move on. You have to something a bit smaller.
But it's just whiskey and Guinness, they go so well together. Like whereas you wouldn't really see fellas drinking pints of Heineken and then having a good whiskey with it. Like it just doesn't work. It's a bit of a waste, if you ask me. But Guinness complements it. I don't know what it is about it. It's the big flavours and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Move forward now and talk about the Irish whiskey exploration. But before we do that, will we give the other one a try?
Yeah, so we'll go with the Glendalough here.
Yeah.
Lovely.
This be one of your favourites?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of these guys. Very supportive of myself as well. Anytime I come looking for something, they're very, very obliging to me. So give them a shout out here.
What you saying, Rob's HQ tonight?
Yeah.
This is a smoky one as well.
Yeah.
Sláinte, did you say?
Sláinte, lads. Ooh, bit more smoke on this one.
Yeah.
Very, very good. They sent me this only a couple of weeks ago, so give them a shout out.
Good job.
Yeah.
So what are we calling that one? So
this is Glendalough. This is Mickle. They're both this is pot still whiskey. They're peated as well, which means that they use. So we use barley for whiskey, and to dry the barley, they use actual peat or turf on the smoke, and the smoke rises and it kind of gets infused into the barley, and that's where you get that smoky taste from.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I swear, you get that camping feel of it.
Yeah, it's like this one is campfire, that kind of charcoaly. And a lot of guys don't. Peat in Ireland it's been around a long time, obviously, but it's not as common. But you can see it now. It's smoky whiskies coming through. It's traditionally considered a Scotch style, but we've always done smoke, and it's coming through more now. So as you get into whiskey, your taste develop, and you're looking for more and more flavour. So peat, a lot of guys now are getting onto smoky whiskies now.
Deadly. And come here, you spoke about, I suppose, a passion for whiskey at a kind of an early enough age.
Yeah.
What kind of led you on to starting up the page? And
yeah, so like I always had a bit of a collection, like maybe 20, 25 bottles of whiskey, and then when COVID happened and whatever you were into, you got really into.
Yeah.
So I literally I had a small collection, about 25 bottles of whiskey, and I took a picture of a bottle of whiskey one day, put up a post and said what I thought about this whiskey.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Simple.
And everyone was at home. Everyone was drinking at home and sitting at home. And so it was a good time to start the page, and got a good following fairly early. Like, it was slow, but it got built up, and then I released my own single cask whiskey with Clonakilty. So basically, I went to Clonakilty. I picked one barrel of whiskey that I liked, and we bottled it and put our label on it. And I filmed that process. And one of those things with social media, nobody understands why. It went viral. We got about 8 million views, and then that's where I got a following from. And once you get that type of following, you get a lot of interest from all the other distilleries now. So they send me, I get sent lots of good whiskies, and I get invited to incredible events and drinking some of the best whiskies, Irish whiskies in the world, like literally the best Irish whiskies in the world, and getting to meet distillers and whiskey company owners. And the whole point of the page is just promotion of Irish whiskey. It's a hobby, but it's opened up a whole.
Did you ever think it was going to be that? Or
Absolutely not. No, the goal was to get to 1,000 followers.
Yeah.
What
was it like meeting Michael Flatley?
You know what? He was actually a gentleman. Yeah, it was great. That was he doesn't do things by half. That event was just unbelievable. He was genuine. Was a nice fella, and he has an interest in whiskey. Obviously, he has a graph for Ireland and stuff like that. So he was great actually. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It's taken you on travelled as well, hasn't it? The page, like, it's sort of giving you the opportunity to not just travel around Ireland, but to go abroad as well. What's that been like?
Yeah, I mean, I was in America last month. I was in a place called Tiernan in Trenton, New Jersey. They have an Irish pub there, and it's a proper Irish pub. Like, there's lots of Irish pubs in the US, as we know. Yeah, this is a proper Irish pub. Like, they're promoting Irish culture and very Republican and all this type of stuff. But they asked me to go and do a tasting over there, so we went, and actually Glendalough were one of the lads who supported me with that as well, and we had Keeper's Heart, which is a blend of bourbon, American bourbon and Irish whiskey. They're mixing them together. And then we had Clonakilty, who I did my barrel pick with, but the Americans don't do things by half either, like Mr. Flatley, and it was just unbelievable. We had 50 or 60 people there at 12 o'clock on a Sunday. They had 2 bagpipers who piped me into the pub. We did like a Q&A, questions, and then we went through a tasting of the whiskies there, and then just had the best crack ever. Like, it was they're really appreciative of people coming over from Ireland. Like, I'm sure I was happy to be there. Like, it was treated like a king. It was my 15 minutes of fame, without a doubt. That's the one thing about Americans, isn't it? Like, they're proud of their Irish roots.
So what's the difference between a good Irish whiskey and a bourbon? Like, what's the difference of the process?
So bourbon is just whiskey too. It's just another name for whiskey, but they have the bourbon laws over there. So it was brought in years ago to protect the agricultural industry. So their big crop there is corn. Yeah. So Irish and Scotch will use lots of barley and other grains too, wheat and stuff like that. But our big crop for whiskey is barley. So to protect the crops over there and the farmers, they introduced the bourbon laws. So you had the mash bill, which is what the grains are used, had to be 51% corn. So you have to use corn. Then they also have to use virgin barrels. So no whiskey can have been in that barrel before, right? So it makes no sense if you were to set up a company now and put those limitations on you. You wouldn't. Yeah. Big thing with bourbon's obviously huge. It's huge in the US, and it has a good following over here as well. But for me, bourbon can all taste the same because the mash bill is all very, very similar. It's all corn, which gives it a sweetness. Also, the oak, virgin oak, so fresh barrels. Yeah. The whiskey goes into fresh barrels. So what we do is, when they're finished using those when the whiskey comes out of those barrels, they can't use them again legally and call it bourbon. So we take those barrels and we use that to influence the flavour of Irish whiskey. So we benefit massively from the bourbon. These bourbon laws.
Their whiskey sitting in the cask for so long.
Yeah, so let's think that these are fantastic barrels and they're infused with these flavours.
Yeah.
And we take that and we put our whiskey in, which has its own flavour profile.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have the Irish style of whiskey, the quintessential Irish whiskey is single pot still whiskey, which is barley and unmalted barley. You can get into a whole lecture about why that is, but it's basically to avoid taxes from the Brits. They used to tax malted barley.
Still are.
Yeah. They taxed malted barley. So when you malt barley, so you take the barley and you heat the barley up and you trick it into thinking that it's spring and it starts to sprout. And that's what malting means. And then you stop that process and you grind it up and that's what you make your whiskey from. So the Brits were basically trying to tax Irish whiskey out of existence. So they started taxing malted barley. She says, right, we'll use malted and unmalted barley, like raw barley, just barley. And it turns out that we love the flavour of that. And that's how it's still today. It gives it a nice creamy kind of texture, kind of oats, that type of texture, and a real spiciness. So we would take that. We take the bourbon barrels that they can't use anymore. We'll say thanks very much. We'll buy them off you. We put our whiskey into it, so we're getting basically the benefit of both worlds.
I'm never going to drink a glass of whiskey the same anymore.
There's a hot look. You can go. It's very, very technical. You can go into it, but that's basically what it is. So bourbon has to adhere. Some people think that bourbon can only come from Kentucky, but that's not the case. It has to be American, and it has to be 51% corn and virgin oak barrels. So it has to be oak, and it has to be no whiskey ever been in the barrel before. Whereas in Ireland, it's not as rigid now. What you can call single pot still whiskey, that's another. I'm not going to start talking about that.
You're blowing our minds.
There are lads more qualified to talk about that than I am. But the whiskey here just has to be 3 years old and it has to be made on the island of Ireland. So any 32 counties, and that's call it Irish.
There's a big business, isn't there? And like whiskey's nearly become currency with the cask whiskies.
Yeah, like there's lots of investment programs. Like in the 70s and 80s, whiskey was nearly decimated. We had 4 distilleries on the island, and I think there's 50 now.
Yes.
So they're popping up everywhere now. It's been massive growth. Whether that growth can be sustained is another thing. We might lose 1 or 2 of them, but I do think that Irish whiskey is going to continue on to build up. And before Prohibition, we were the biggest whiskey in the world.
Yeah.
Prohibition came in. Our access to the US was cut off, obviously.
Yeah.
But the Scots had a way into the US market via Canada because it's part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, yeah.
We were just basically cut off. We lost most of our distilleries. But before that, Ireland had the best reputation for whiskey in the world.
Yeah.
It was smooth. You know, it was easy. It was easy to drink, and the flavour was just better. We triple distill, whereas the Scots are double distill, so it's a bit more of an edge to it.
Yeah.
But the US was the big market, and it continues to be the big market. So when it was cut off, it decimated us. We were left with the big distilleries that everyone knows: Bushmills, Tullamore, Idea, which is Jameson.
Yeah. And
then like Powers and a few other brands that amalgamated together to form IDL, which is basically Jameson, the Jameson company.
Yeah.
So in the 70s and 80s, that's all we had. And then slowly but surely, the renaissance has happened in Irish whiskey, and it's booming now. There's distilleries opening all over every county now nearly has a distillery in it, which is great.
Yeah, class.
How important is it for Irish bars and pubs and stuff to continue to create that atmosphere that you might have seen when you went to America and got the atmosphere that you got out of Tiernan? Has there been places that you visited around Ireland that have given that vibe, like while you've been on your travels? Oh yeah, like there are pubs in Ireland that have leaned into the whiskey thing really hard, and they've done an amazing job becoming whiskey pubs. You know, the best pub in the world is in Dingle. Dick Mack's in Dingle is the best pub in Ireland, so it means it's the best pub in the world. You know. But there's other fantastic whiskey bars, the Shelburne in Cork, and Thomas Connolly's in Sligo. They're really pushing hard with the whiskey stuff. The Palace Bar in Dublin,
A mate of mine owns the Halfpenny Inn in Temple Bar as well, and they're all pushing whiskey big time, and it's great to see it. There's a huge tradition with whiskey and Irish pubs, and how that has changed over the years from whiskey bonders. Like, distillers used to sell whiskey in barrels. Like, it was kind of uncommon to sell it in bottles.
Yeah.
But what was happening was they were selling whiskey barrels to pubs, and pubs were watering it down and changing it. So Jameson were like, "You're ruining our product. You're giving us a bad name." So that's how bottling became more mainstream. But
Right. Okay.
whiskey bonding was a big thing. You'll see it in pubs nearly every pub in Dublin says whiskey bonder. Most people don't know what that means. So they used to buy barrels of whiskey and bottle it themselves. They might even finish it in a different barrel. So they would take Jameson or any whiskey they had, and they'd get a sherry barrel from Portugal and put it into that, which is now common practice in Ireland. So we're the big one in Ireland, obviously, is Redbreast. Most people will know what Redbreast is. So that's single pot still whiskey. Generally starts off in bourbon, like I discussed before, and then they will put it into like a sherry or a port or a Pedro Jimenez cask. It's a huge trade. They're bringing them over from Spain and Portugal. So, and those sherry and port casks are infusing massive flavour.
So they're just literally swapping.
Literally just empty. When the port or the sherry is emptied out, they take the barrel and they put the Irish whiskies in there,
Fusion.
and that has already been in a bourbon cask. So the flavour profile, so the complexity of that flavour just keeps building and building. And you can keep doing that over and over again, but you could ruin the flavour of it. So 2 or 3 barrels finishing is generally what will get the best results.
Sweet spot.
Yeah. There's so much to it. It can be really technical, and there's guys out there who know much more about this stuff than me.
No, but in simple.
That's basically it. So you're using other spirits to influence the flavour of our whiskey. That's basically what we're doing.
And in the words of our beloved security guard here, where do you see this going, Keith? So he likes to ask all our guests.
Yeah, well, like I said, we've up to about 50 distilleries now. I think it's gonna keep building. We're gonna lose 1 or 2. We lost a big one recently, Waterford. A huge factory down, obviously, in Waterford.
Yeah.
They collapsed recently. But I do think that the space is going to keep building. Now, we'll see what Trump and the rest of the world does with tariffs, and that's a big thing now. Tariffs is I'm sure a lot of distilleries out there are worried about tariffs. So if your big market is the US, now you're paying 20% more. But hopefully it can be avoided. I think it's starting to look like deals are going to be done.
Do you still learn as you go?
Oh yeah, like you see, like I touched on it, just a few things there, but you can go down a rabbit hole and the history of whiskey and where whiskey came from. And there's the big debate: where is it Irish or Scotch? Is the Scots invention? It's absolutely an Irish invention.
You're a product of your own probably success now. You probably have to deep dive into that now.
Yeah, so and you do, and because like I get invited to all these incredible events and drinking literally the best whiskey in Ireland. So for me, it's the best whiskey in the world. Like, I've had some whiskies that would just blow your mind. People who aren't into whiskey, some of the whiskies that I've tried, if I could just give them a glass of this 38-year-old single pot still from Redbreast, it's a different thing altogether. Like, you know.
If you could sit 3 people down in the Central with you, any 3 people you wanted to have a glass of whiskey, who would it be?
Alive or dead? Both.
I thought this question would come up, and I had thought of people, and they're all dead. So I'm gonna have to come up with something else on the floor.
No, go deceased as well. Yeah.
So look, just people I'm fascinated by. You could go and try and impress by saying Aristotle and that type of stuff, but I always am a big fan of JFK. I just think the stories that he could tell you would just be unbelievable.
Outrageous, yeah.
Did he see anything the last minute?
Yeah, well, he was a bit of a bio, as we know, you know, and the big Irish connection, big fan of JFK. There's a big poster of him in my whiskey room at home. I've seen every documentary about him, so stuff like that I'd be fascinated by. One living, I'm a huge Springsteen fan, so I just think something like that. For me, if I could do something like that, it'd be more about just having the crack and having a bit of fun, somebody to entertain you.
You can sing, song.
Yeah, exactly, you know, that type of stuff. Obviously there are people you'd like to meet, you know, but maybe not have it. Maybe not spend the night drinking with them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You've got one left. One more.
We'll go for someone who's alive, will we?
Yeah.
So
might happen then.
So JFK and Springsteen might be a bit stiff. So we go with a comedian maybe. I'm a huge Ricky Gervais fan. I love everything he does. I've followed him for years, and I just think he's hilarious. And
he's gas.
I like his no bullshit approach and stuff like that. And I'd say he's got crack on the beer.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. It. Good man to have a whiskey with. Definitely.
It's been brilliant.
Brilliant, lads.
Pleasure,
Thanks,
Keith. Thanks very much for coming in.
Fantastic.
Take it easy.